ladies and gentlemen, I came here with a word for somebody today. A word for the one who has been stuck in the same place, waiting for a sign, hoping for a change, wondering when your moment will come. Well, let me tell you, your moment is now. Too many of us are dying in the nest, stuck in comfort, trapped in fear, waiting for permission to do what God already equipped us to do. But hear me, the nest was never meant to be your home. It was only a place of preparation. When an eagle is born, it is fed, it is nurtured, it is protected. But when it's time to fly, the mother eagle does something that seems cruel. She starts stirring the nest. She removes the soft feathers and the padding, exposing the sticks and the thorns. The very place that once felt comfortable now feels painful. The baby eagle doesn't understand, why is this happening? Why is everything shifting? Why does it feel like I don't belong here anymore? But the mother knows, if I don't make you uncomfortable, you will never leave. If I don't push you out, you will never learn to fly. Some of you are wondering why your life has been disrupted, why certain doors closed, why people walked away, why what used to work doesn't work anymore. You thought God was punishing you, but what if I told you He's just pushing you? The nest is temporary. You were never meant to stay in that job, in that mindset, in that toxic relationship, in that level of life forever. You were created to soar, but you can't soar if you refuse to leave the place where you feel safe. The Bible says, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. But you can't mount up if you're afraid to move. You can't fly if you won't leave the familiar. Listen, God will let the nest get uncomfortable before He lets you miss your destiny. He will shake things up. He will disrupt your routine. He will take away the crutches you've been leaning on because He knows you were not made to die in the nest. Somebody in this room needs to hear this. The longer you stay where you don't belong, the more you risk missing what's ahead. Fear has kept you ground, doubt has kept you small, but you were made for greater. Your wings work, your purpose is real, your calling is waiting. It's time to step out, it's time to take the leap, it's time to trust God like never before. Because what you think is a fall is actually your flight. Don't die in the nest. When God has called you to the sky, spread your wings, step into your destiny, and fly. The nest is a place of comfort, a place of preparation, a place where you are nurtured, fed, and protected. It's the space where you are developed, where you are surrounded by familiarity, where everything you need is within reach. But the problem comes when you mistake temporary provision for permanent placement. The nest was never meant to be your final destination. It was only meant to be the launching pad, the training ground. And yet too many people get so attached to where they started that they refuse to move forward. They settle in a place they were only meant to pass through. They get comfortable in a situation that was never designed to hold them long term. Think about a baby bird. When it first hatches, the nest is everything. It's home, it's security, it's all it knows. But if that bird stays in the nest too long, what was once a place of protection becomes a place of limitation. It was safe when it was growing, but it becomes a prison if it refuses to leave. Some of you are holding on to a place that no longer serves your growth. You're staying in a job that no longer challenges you. You're clinging to relationships that no longer support your purpose. You're resisting change because it's uncomfortable. But if you're not careful, the very place that once sustained you will start to suffocate you. The danger of staying in the nest too long is that you lose sight of what's possible beyond it. You get used to small thinking. You get used to playing it safe. You get used to depending on others instead of stepping out on faith. And before you know it, what was once a place of security becomes the reason you never step into your destiny. There is a time to be in the nest, and there is a time to leave. The question is, will you have the courage to go when God says it's time? Because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to break free. The longer you hold on, the more you risk dying in a place where you were never meant to stay. God didn't call you to stay in the nest. He called you to fly. Discomfort is not always the enemy. Sometimes it is the very thing that pushes you into destiny. Too often we resist change because it feels unsettling. We pray for elevation, but when God starts shaking things up, we panic. We cry out, "Why is this happening to me?" But the real question is, what if it's happening for you? An eagle does not leave the nest on its own. It has to be pushed. The mother eagle knows that if she waits for her baby to decide it's ready, it will stay in the nest forever. So what does she do? She begins to make the nest uncomfortable. The soft padding that once made the nest feel like home is removed. The warmth and security it once knew are taken away. Suddenly, the baby eagle starts feeling something new, discomfort. That's exactly what happens to us when we are on the verge of something greater. The very things that once felt familiar begin to shift. The job that once felt fulfilling starts to drain you. The people you depended on start to distance themselves. The place where you once felt comfortable starts to feel too small. And when life gets uncomfortable, our first instinct is to complain, to resist, to try and force things back to the way they were. But what if God is not punishing you? What if He's pushing you? We serve a God who will not let you stay in a place beneath your potential. He will not let you settle for less when He created you for more. So if you won't move on your own, He will allow circumstances to move you. He will shake things up, not to harm you, but to help you, because He knows that if He lets you stay comfortable, you will never step into your purpose. Look at your life right now. Where is the discomfort? Where are the doors closing? Where do you feel unsettled? Instead of seeing it as an attack, start seeing it as a sign. That relationship that ended, it was a push. That transition you didn't ask for, it was a push. And when God pushes you, it's not to make you fall. It's to make you fly. You can fight it, you can resist it, you can try to hold on to what's fading. But the truth is, destiny will not let you stay where you don't belong. When God is ready to move you, no amount of clinging to the past will stop the shift. The only question is, will you trust the push? Because if you don't, you risk staying in a place that no longer fits you. And what's worse than leaving the nest? Dying in it. Fear has kept too many people grounded when they were meant to fly. It's not that they don't have wings, is that they refuse to use them. The fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, the fear of stepping into something new has paralyzed them in a place they were never meant to stay. But faith and fear cannot operate in the same space. At some point, you will have to decide whether you will trust your fear or trust the one who gave you wings in the first place. An eaglet doesn't know it can fly when it's first pushed out of the nest. All it knows is that it is falling. Can you imagine the panic? The wind rushing past, the sky spinning, the world below getting closer and closer. It must feel like failure. But what the baby eagle doesn't realize is that the fall is necessary for the flight. The fall is not a sign of defeat. It's the process of discovery. Because somewhere in the middle of the fall, instinct kicks in. The wings that have been growing in secret, the strength that has been developing over time, suddenly go to work. And that bird that thought it was falling, it was flying all along. This is where so many people get stuck. They see the leap as a loss. They see the transition as trouble. They feel the pull to step out, but they let fear talk them out of it. What if I fail? What if I make a mistake? What if I fall flat on my face? But what if you fly? What if everything you've been praying for is on the other side of your fear? What if staying where you are is the real failure? The enemy loves to use fear as a weapon because he knows that a fearful person will paralyze themselves. He doesn't have to block your blessing. He just has to make you afraid to step into it. And if you let fear dictate your decisions, you will spend your whole life with wings that never get used, potential that never gets tapped into, dreams that never get pursued. And you will sit in the nest watching others soar, wishing you had the courage to move. The thing about faith is that it doesn't always make sense. Faith requires you to jump before you see the landing. It demands that you trust in what you cannot yet see. And sometimes God will push you before you feel ready because he knows you are ready before you knew it. If you wait until you feel fully prepared, fully confident, fully certain, you'll be waiting your entire life. You cannot let the fear of falling keep you from your call. You were made to fly. You were designed for greater. But if you refuse to move, you will never know what you're capable of. Don't let fear rob you of your future. Don't let doubt keep you in a place where you don't belong. Don't let the uncertainty of the unknown keep you from stepping into the sky that was always yours to claim. You were not designed to stay grounded. You were not created to remain in the same place, doing the same thing, living a life that does not challenge or stretch you. The very fact that you have wings is proof that you were meant to fly. But wings don't work in the nest. Wings don't serve their purpose in a place of comfort. Wings were given to take you higher, to carry you beyond where you started, to push you into places your feet could never take you. An eagle's wings are not just for decoration. They are not just something to admire. They were built for work. They were built to sustain flight, to endure strong winds, to rise above the storm. But an eagle will never know the strength of its wings until it starts using them. Some of you are waiting for confirmation, waiting for a guarantee, waiting for everything to be perfect before you step out. But the only way to activate what's inside you is to move. You will never know your true potential if you refuse to step out of what's familiar. It's easy to admire others who are soaring. It's easy to look at people who have stepped into their purpose and assume that they were somehow different, that they had something you don't have. But the only difference between those who soar and those who stay stuck is who was willing to use what they were given. The ones who fly are not necessarily the smartest, the most talented, or the most experienced. They are simply the ones who refuse to let their wings go to waste. How many dreams have died in the nest because someone was too afraid to stretch their wings? How many opportunities have been missed because someone refused to believe they could do it? You can have all the talent in the world, but if you never use it, it will never take you anywhere. You can have all the potential, all the vision, all the gifts, but if you refuse to leave your place of comfort, you will never experience the fullness of what God put inside you. The most tragic thing is not someone who tries and fails. The most tragic thing is someone who never tries at all. The most tragic thing is a life lived in the nest when it was meant for the sky. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to know every step, but you do have to trust that what God gave you is enough. Your wings work. Your gifts are real. Your calling is waiting, but none of it matters if you refuse to move. It's time to put your wings to work. It's time to step out. It's time to fly. Not everyone can go where you're going. Not everything you're holding onto can survive at the next level. Growth requires separation, and separation is never easy. It is one of the hardest, most painful, and most uncomfortable parts of elevation. But if you are going to soar, you have to be willing to leave behind what can't fly with you. When an eagle is in the nest, it is surrounded by other eaglets. They are all in the same place, depending on the same source, waiting to be fed. But when the time comes to fly, not every eaglet will take the leap. Some will hesitate. Some will refuse to move. Some will stay in the nest even when it becomes uncomfortable. And if the eagle waits for everyone else to move before it does, it will never leave. This is where many people struggle. You want to move forward, but you don't want to leave people behind. You want to step into something greater, but you're afraid of what you might lose. You've been connected to certain relationships, certain habits, certain environments for so long that the thought of moving on feels like betrayal. But hear this, growth is a lonely process. You cannot take everyone with you, because not everyone is willing to grow. Some people are comfortable in the nest. They don't want to change. They don't want to step out in faith. They don't want to take the risk that is required for elevation. And if you're not careful, their fear will start to infect you. Their doubts will start to weigh you down. Their resistance to change will start to keep you stuck. And before you know it, you are sacrificing your future just to keep people comfortable. You have to decide, do I want to be liked or do I want to be launched? Because the higher you go, the thinner the air gets. The higher you go, the fewer people can go with you. If you insist on holding on to people who are not willing to grow, you will clip your own wings trying to carry weight you were never meant to bear. Some friendships will fade. Some relationships will shift. Some connections will weaken, not because you don't love them, but because your destiny requires you to move. Even Jesus had to separate from the crowd. Even Jesus had to pull away from people who didn't understand his assignment. So why do you think you can take everybody with you? Why do you think you can keep holding on to things that no longer align with where you're going? Letting go is hard. Separation hurts. But staying where you don't belong is even more painful. You can't be so attached to the past that you forfeit your future. You can't be so afraid of change that you refuse to take flight. If you have to walk alone for a season, walk. If you have to leave some people behind, leave. If you have to break away from everything you once knew to become who you were meant to be, do it. Because what's ahead of you is greater than anything you've ever had to walk away from. Don't let attachment keep you in the nest. It's time to move. It's time to grow. It's time to fly. The longer you stay in a place that no longer serves your growth, the greater the risk of missing what's ahead. Too many people spend their lives waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for the fear to go away, waiting for someone to validate their next move. And in all that waiting, they lose time, they lose opportunities, they lose momentum. But the most dangerous thing they lose is their purpose. When an eagle refuses to leave the nest, it becomes weak. The wings that were meant for flight begin to wither from lack of use. The body that was designed for soaring starts to shrink from inactivity. And the longer it stays, the harder it becomes to ever leave. What was once a place of preparation becomes a place of limitation. What was once a season of growth becomes a lifetime of stagnation. This is what happens when you stay where you don't belong. You start losing pieces of yourself. The fire you once had begins to fade. The dreams you once carried start to feel distant. The vision God placed inside of you gets buried beneath layers of fear, doubt, and complacency. And before you know it, you are merely existing in a place where you were meant to thrive. Look at your life right now. What have you been holding on to that God has been telling you to release? What have you been settling for because you're afraid to step into something new? Where have you allowed comfort to become a cage? The worst thing you can do is ignore the signs. The worst thing you can do is stay in a place that God is trying to push you out of. You don't get an unlimited number of chances. You don't get to keep postponing your destiny. There is a window of opportunity, and if you refuse to move when it's time, you might miss it. The Bible says to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. If you don't move when your season changes, you could spend your life out of alignment, wondering why you never stepped into what was meant for you. At some point, you have to make a decision. Will you stay where it's safe, where it's easy, where you don't have to stretch or grow? Or will you trust God enough to step into the unknown? Will you keep waiting for a guarantee? Or will you take the leap and believe that you were created to soar? Time is moving, the season's shifting, and you cannot afford to stay stuck. The sky is waiting, your future is waiting, but the nest is not your home. The nest was never meant to hold you forever. Don't let hesitation rob you of your destiny. Don't let comfort become your coffin. Don't die in the nest. It's time to spread your wings, step out on faith, and fly. You were never meant to stay in the nest. You were never meant to remain in a place of comfort, watching life pass you by, wondering what could have been. God placed something inside of you, wings, purpose, power, destiny, but none of it will activate until you step out in faith. Yes. The nest was necessary. It was where you were fed, where you were nurtured, where you were prepared. But preparation is not the destination. It was only a season, and seasons change. If you refuse to move when God says move, if you hold on to a place that was only meant to be temporary, you will find yourself trapped, unfulfilled, and stuck in a cycle that was never meant to last forever. It won't be easy. The wind will feel strong. The fall will feel frightening. The unknown will try to shake your confidence, but you cannot let fear keep you from your future. You cannot let comfort keep you from your calling. You cannot let attachment keep you from ascending. Some of you have been feeling the push. You've been sensing the shift. You know deep down that it's time. Time to walk away from what no longer serves you. Time to stop waiting for permission to be who God created you to be. Time to trust that what's ahead is greater than anything you're leaving behind. The sky is waiting, your purpose is waiting, but you will never see it if you stay stuck in a place that no longer fits you. Don't die in the nest. It's time to rise. It's time to move. It's time to fly.